And that's what's interesting about some of the assessments too, the spectrum there of what is focused on you as an individual and just kind of building yourself in as an individual. But some of them are very specific. There's a few that are on that list that deal with like, hey, okay, so here's your assessment, kind of like when you go through in high school. Now here are the jobs that you could potentially have, or that people with this particular score tend to go into this field. You may find that you really gravitate toward a completely new field based on what your strengths actually are.
Welcome to the Work Austin podcast. This is episode 12. Today we're talking about the best self-assessments that you can take online when you're transitioning in your career or trying to find a new position. I guess that is still transitioning. Self-assessments really just help you figure out where you want to go and kind of what your best personality traits are. So that's what this episode is all about. Today I have Megan, Kelly, and Tara with me to chat about this topic. And to read the description quickly, there is the Myers-Briggs, Clifton, Kiersey. What do all these names mean? Do all self-assessments provide accurate results? In this episode, we're talking about all of these self-assessments.
It's a hard word.
It is a hard word. And how you can take those right now today. A lot of them are online. So we'll discuss self-assessments that we've taken, how they've affected the way that we work, and we'll also chat about the advantages of knowing your own personality. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel so that you have updates and get updates directly to your notification box about when we post new videos. If you're watching or listening rather on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Google Podcast, you can also follow on those platforms so that you're notified when new episodes go up every Tuesday morning around 6 a.m. Now that that's all done, let's talk about, well, first let's do, I'm bringing back the icebreaker. I like the icebreaker. So let's talk about the best quizzes that we've taken online. So it doesn't have to be a self-assessment, just like it could be like one of those fun Facebook quizzes. What's your favorite little online quiz that you've taken?
Those wrote me in. Like, I love it. I'm so tempted by like, if you were a celebrity, which one would you be?
Yes.
Or which Disney princess are you? I'm like, I would love to find out which Disney princess I am. So those are just like that guilty pleasure. And what I'm so interested about with those is what type of, like, is it completely random, or do they actually have something built behind it that is telling people, okay, so you like green grass instead of, big wide open ocean. What does that actually say about my personality? Is there science in it? I don't know.
I feel like the ones that are like celebrity based are kind of random. They might put inputs as to like what they learned from looking up from the outside in on somebody's lives, like what they've learned along the way. They might add that into some sort of algorithm, but
I think they're just trying to capture information about me to market me things, or
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Thanks, BuzzFeed.
Exactly.
Kelly or Megan, do you have favorite quizzes that you've taken in the past?
I think those are very similar. I'm kind of a Facebook addict, so I look at Facebook and I see this. And because what I like to do on my other time is I always like to send people like the love languages quiz, and I like to see like where my friends and families are and family. And I always like to retake those, make sure nothing's changed. Right. I always like to do those types of things. Like I like the psychology aspect of things, so I always send those to my people and I make them do it. I think those do speak a lot to your personality, and they normally are pretty accurate.
Yeah, I think that was a good point, because like I remember taking a bunch of quizzes in college, and then they'll pop back up again like 10 years later, 5 years later. I don't remember how long ago that was. And just to see if like my answers change or what my final outcome is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And if you have a travel bug syndrome like me, I took a quiz on findyourspot.com on what city in the United States that you should live in.
Nice.
And based on your interests, your food interests. And And I took it and I took it about 15 years ago, then I took it 10 years ago, and still the same city keeps popping up for me. But it lists 10 cities that's in line with your views and different aspects of your life, the food, the arts, politically speaking, religiously speaking, any kind of thing like that. If you like a big city, herbs. So herbal kind of person, urban kind of person, herbal.
Or,
Urban kind of person.
or
I do
whatever.
I do like my green tea.
Maybe that's part of it.
Right. Yeah, that one sounds cool. You said it's findyourspot.com. I'll have to look that up. Free plug for them on this. All right, so let's jump into the actual topic. When this podcast releases, there's also going to be an article that gets published to our Medium blog that has the same topic. I'm pretty much going to run through that because it is outlined really well in this. So basically, Sarah Rawlings, who is also on our communications team, writes all of our posts for us. She basically categorized the big five, which is those ones that I mentioned at the beginning, Kiersey, Clifton, Myers-Briggs. Actually, I'm sorry. The big five is an actual quiz itself. There just happens to be 5 options. So she runs through all those. It's really great information. I guess the best place to start is, which quizzes have you guys taken in the past? And well, let's just start with that. Which quizzes have you guys taken in the past?
I've taken them all.
All of them.
Well, not everyone out there. I feel like every time I look, there's a different quiz that you could potentially take. Mm-hmm. And they tend to say some of the same things, but the ones that I've specifically taken the Clifton Strengths Finder, Myers-Briggs. I've taken a DISC assessment, and I've done the Kiersey temperament. I actually forgot that I did the Kiersey until you mentioned it earlier. I was like, oh yeah, I have taken that one, but I don't tend to refer back to that one like I do some of the other ones.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Just looking at my scores now.
Same here. And there was a long time ago, there was an industry specific for the warehousing industry whenever I first started my HR career. And basically it could determine if someone should be a multitasker, should be a forklift operator, a processor should be in one of these food lines, a highly detailed person should be in another food line. So sometimes it is industry specific, or if you're looking on a leadership style that you have. So that's also pretty interesting, even from the staffing component, or if you're learning of building a team for your personality, or you want training yourself to better yourself. So there are different types out there, like Tara had mentioned, and even with the industries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think I've actually taken any of the ones that you said.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but there was at my previous position, there were a lot of like random quizzes that they would kind of push out and send out for us to take. So we did a lot like that. And then the SHRM, the HR association that we were also part of too, we did a lot of quizzes in there that they were kind of a lot like Kelly said, when you're just starting out in your career, like where are you going to go, or where does this look like for you? What does this path look like? So I'm interested to try these because I've never tried those. So I'm going to try to do them. I'll go.
I don't want to jump ahead of you, but I love the Strengths Finder. If I were to recommend any of them out of the list that we just talked about, Strengths Finder is my favorite. Like each one, I have it here. I do refer back to it a lot. What's interesting about Strengths Finder is that, so you take a quiz, you get a book, you get a code in the back of the book, and then it runs through like 34 different strengths. And I thought that this was going to come out with something like I had taken for other pieces, where it was going to talk about how I behave at work and what's going to be my strength. Am I more dominant? Am I more, and what it came up with was top 5 strengths for me as a person that I can apply to a lot of different aspects of my life. And when I read through them, they give you your top 5, and then you can kind of scroll through the book and read the definitions of those. And it's been so powerful for me as a manager, as a professional trying to advance my career, understanding what are the things that I value and what are the things that I'm really excited about. One of the things from the StrengthsFinder quiz in particular that I really love is like the developer one. The idea that I enjoy helping other people grow and develop, and so then I use that in my life to kind of enhance that. So, gosh, if you're going to take one, I kind of feel like start with StrengthsFinder.
StrengthsFinder, yeah. So I definitely think that Myers-Briggs is kind of the one that people know the best, just because it's I think it's just one of the bigger ones that are out there. You can take it for free. You can pay to get like further information on your answers. But it does provide you like just a lot of insight into how you get your energy, how you take information, and how you learn. Similar to StrengthsFinder, but it sounds like StrengthsFinder is a lot more detailed on those different topics.
Well, I mean, so I've taken Myers-Briggs as well, and I'm an INFJ, and in my INFJ, you know, it talks about, okay, so I'm introverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging. So that talks about how I process the information, but it doesn't talk about necessarily like the way that StrengthsFinder focuses in on how you apply that.
Yeah. Any more discussion on like some of the best ones that you think, Megan or Kelly, some of the best ones out there, since we're talking about Tara's favorite now?
Megan, do you have one? Or
Yeah, you can go. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure if I have one that I've actually like super loved like that.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe now I need to kind of mess around with it a little bit. If I can find one that I love like that. Because I feel like the ones that I found. Yeah, so I feel like the ones that I found have been very broad. You know, they're in the generic like Facebook ones where it's like silly things like that, where it's just simple little things that pop up. But I've never actually taken like the in-depth like that. So that's something that I definitely, it sounds fun. And I would do one more detailed like that.
So go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, sorry. The disc. What I liked about taking the disc was that it actually gave you some tips on how to balance out some of your opportunities for improvement. So being, you know, a visionary myself, I have to have an end date on a calendar. Otherwise, my multitasking side of me, because I don't want to feel trapped too much, you know, in the same thing over and over again. And I can have fun with these different taskings. I can reel it in whenever there's that thing on the calendar telling me that I still need to finish up this. So it's really nice whenever you have and take one that offers some tips on how to improve, you know, the areas that you're kind of lacking, and then how to reel back a bit on some of the things that maybe you're a little bit lopsided on in the chart. And I feel like the effective tests out there are the ones that offer a balance on how we can reel it in a bit, or we can thrive in the areas that we're lacking in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really interesting, actually, Ian, when I saw your DISC scores, because some of the, like, it helped me to, and same thing with you, Kelly, like it helps me to understand how I'm working well with other people. When you understand their behavioral traits or their styles, you start to be able to better communicate with those people. And, you know, what do people look, if you're looking for a new job, people want to know that you can work well in teams and find common ground or take leadership or charge of a team. Those self-assessments help you determine where you fit in that spectrum.
Yeah, and I actually really like that you brought that up, because when everyone in the office was taking that specific quiz, the DISC self-assessment, we would get our results, print them out, and everyone hung them on the wall, so that at one point I found myself like walking office to office looking at everyone's scores just to see like how they work and what their mindsets are, because it does help you understand better understand more how you can work better with those people.
That I
You do it again. Yeah.
I had no idea. One of my team members, we altered the way I gave her a heads up on what the meeting was going to be about because one of the areas was give this personality type a heads up what the meeting's about because they don't want to be put on the spot. So I actually altered a supervisory skill set to adapt to, understanding that. So it was very helpful for that team building component as well, like you said, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing I want to talk about is the advantage of knowing like those results. Do you find yourself working differently because of the results? Like for me, I've taken some.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For me, I've taken most of the time I get like visionary or something similar to that on these quizzes. So it's like I have really big ideas. I'm not always great at acting on these ideas. But for me, like with all of these results saying basically the same thing, it's like, oh, well, maybe I need to change something, change the way I work, look at things a little bit differently. And it just really helped me kind of morph my own mindset to my personality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually, there's one test that I took, and it's not necessarily specific to one of the top 5 tests or anything. It was a particular program that I took that had a self-assessment attached to it. It was a paid program. And in that, you're supposed to have like your natural style and your learned or your adapted style. Mm-hmm. I didn't have an adapted style. And the instructor was like, you tried to cheat the test, and this proves a lot about you and how you approach things. And essentially that it helps you understand yourself and where you can, how you're showing your authenticity, or, because everybody adapts a little bit at work. I tend to be a little bit more dominant, but I've realized sometimes I got to dial that back. And so it just helps you find, at least for me, it helps me find a good balance of, like Kelly was saying, you're looking at those strengths and weaknesses and figuring out how to apply it to making yourself a person of value.
Yeah, and I think to go along with that too, not only do you learn where you can adjust to fix things, but I think it also helps you focus so much on what your strengths are and then how you can contribute that to a team and to, maybe there is different things. I've worked for with different people, and there's been different ways that other people like to communicate. On top of being able to figure out how to adjust to them, I was also able to figure out just what I'm better at and what I'm good at and how I can contribute that to that team and to those people. So I think that's also pretty cool. So you get both aspects. You get the strengths and the weaknesses, and then you can, work on it or go even further with what the good things are too.
Yeah, in one of the previous podcasts, we were talking about, things to say in an interview and like showing your authenticity and things like that. It also helps, like you could develop questions for the recruiter or the hiring manager surrounding your strengths, like, so that you're really poising yourself to say, well, this is what I can bring to the table. This is one of my top strengths.
It's like your own self-branding. Before, but I do think when you know the things that you're good at and what you're capable of and where you're at, you can really hone in on those things as well.
Absolutely.
Totally
agree. So that kind of leads me into the question that I've been formulating in my head. So to tie this all back to recruiting, has anyone during a interview just like flat out been like, hey, my Myers-Briggs is this, or my Kiersey is this, or like, is that a talking point in first people? And if it isn't, should it be, or can it be?
Tara, I can see that you may have done that before.
So not specifically, no, I haven't done it in an interview because I have been blessed enough to have shared the last 9 years of my life here at Avian. But, so I can't think back on anything immediate, but in business settings, yes, because Avian is a defense contractor and we work with a lot of military people, they're required to take personality assessments. I think specifically the Myers-Briggs. So in that, I had a conversation recently from a retired military Navy captain, and she was talking about it. And so I offered mine. And of course, then she just rattled off then what that meant, and it gave her a better idea of who I am and how I process things. So I do think it's valuable.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anybody just say it. But maybe that's something we can add to the interview questions. We've done this before, but I do think in a way they're not specifically coming out and saying, here are my results, but they do. I mean, when we ask them the question of why should we pick you, or why are you the best candidate for the team, they are, they're saying those things. They're talking to their strengths. So I do think they are somewhat.
I really like that idea of like formulating your questions around your scores for your interview. So that pro tip there.
Well, it kind of leads me back to what you were talking about before about, making sure you come prepared to an interview with questions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know you have specific strengths, or that you can really boost yourself in a particular way, saying, I'm very disciplined. That's one of my top 5 strength finders. So asking questions around the role or the team and then interjecting the value you can have there could really bode well for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's an ease in kind of topic. We don't walk around and say, I'm a high I, they might not even know what we're talking about. But
right.
Well, definitely incorporate what we can offer and bring to the table. And then the other component of being aware of, those things that we need to balance out. So it is a win, to go ahead and understand what you can bring to the table, particularly like Megan was saying in an interview kind of scenario.
Yeah, I definitely think I felt more, this is kind of weird to say, but I felt more grounded after I found or took some of these actual quizzes. I know it is really deep. But just knowing where to start and having a path forward.
Yeah. And outside of just the workplace too. I mean, that just helps on so many other aspects where now where, and maybe I just take things even so much deeper. So it's funny, but I'm just well, maybe now why you have relationships outside of work with family and friends and it's not working out well, and why you can't mend certain things. And so I think being able to know those things and just having some really good self-awareness is always good. You can always work at that.
And that's what's interesting about some of the assessments too, the spectrum there of what is focused on you as an individual and just kind of building yourself in as an individual. But some of them are very specific, like Kelly was saying with manufacturing. There's a few that are on that list that deal with hey, okay, so here's your assessment, kind of like when you go through in high school. Now here are the jobs that you could potentially have, or that people with this particular score tend to go into this field. You may find that you really gravitate toward a completely new field based on what your strengths actually are.
Do you think that those things change? I just have a question now. Do you guys think that those things change over time? And I ask because when I was in high school, when I took those quizzes, in my tech school and stuff that I went to, it was all oh, you should get into hospitality. And I worked in the hotel industry and I did that type of thing for a while, but I didn't care for it. And now that I'm older and I'm taking more quizzes and I'm doing different things, I've been able to really find what I actually love. So I think it has changed. Maybe it's with age, maybe it's just scenarios, but I do think that's definitely changed. So it's probably good to continuously take those things.
And that ties in, Megan, actually to another point, is that whenever you're taking the test, you're not supposed to take it another one and another one. It's basically because if you're taking it again, it's because something changed in your life, or else you're in another place in your life. And because if you would take it, say, within 6 months apart or something like that, you might be able to know, or even 6 weeks apart, what you're looking for, because you're trying to make up or overcompensate for the things and you're kind of paying more attention. So the best and most accurate way is in its raw form. But if time has changed, or if circumstances have changed, or even a very emotionally huge thing has impacted someone's life, maybe then you can take it, or even changing industries. But that really is a really good point, that it's not like you're supposed to take the same one over and over again, because there really needs to be a gap. So So what you said is actually accurate on it's okay to start it out with that.
Yeah.
I think as far as Myers-Briggs go, I'm an introvert. I don't think I'm ever going to become an extrovert. I really need that time to myself to kind of decompress from things. Like I can be in high energy situations and be gung ho and be around a bunch of people and be excited. I think people tend to confuse introvert, extrovert, but I don't necessarily see myself as becoming an extrovert at some point. I think I just kind of am who I am. So I think there's aspects of maybe those classifications on how I'm processing information that might change, but some of the ones that are fundamentally about who you are, I think that some of that is just who you are, and then the types of jobs that you could apply to that may be different. That also kind of ties into the new one that I want to take, which is Emotional Intelligence 2.0. That's a new book that I have in my Amazon cart. I haven't bought it yet, but I really do want to take that assessment to see where I am on that spectrum and how that applies to what I'm doing as well.
Yeah, I was going to answer, but your answer was way better than my answer, so I'll just leave it with that. I do want to point out, though, that so we're talking about self-assessments as quizzes. There is, as we were talking, I was thinking about this. There is another type of self-assessment where you're kind of reflecting on yourself. Maybe we save that for a future episode because that's a little bit different than what we're talking about now. I think, and I know Kelly would have a lot to talk about that with on that topic. So maybe we save that type of self-assessment for a future episode. Maybe we'll tie it in with setting goals and all of that kind of stuff. But besides that, I do want to wrap this episode up. Before I do that, the other thing I wanted to mention at the beginning, we were talking about quizzes that we take on Facebook. Just what if those quizzes were actually like Myers-Briggs and Kiersey and Clifton, just disguised in different ways? That could be a very possible thing.
My Myers-Briggs spirit animal is a sloth.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Or like your Hogwarts house or something. Yeah. Okay. So thank you guys for joining me today. The discussion was really good. I didn't know where this episode was going to go, but I'm extremely happy with where it did go. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe so that you get notified when these videos come out. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or anywhere else, hit the follow button so that, again, you get notified when these episodes come out on Tuesday mornings. Thank you guys for joining me one more time, and I'll see you next time. The Work Awesome podcast is brought to you by Avian. Avian is a 49% employee-owned company founded by retired U.S. Navy test pilots who believe passion and talent are the right traits to get the job done. Avian operates in a culture that thrives on innovation, creativity, and the entrepreneurial spirit. Instead of offering services through mere business transactions, Avian is redefining the government services industry by creating meaningful experiences and connecting talented people with important work. The passion that Avian's employees have for its work builds better partnerships for the future, and Avian's unique talents create real solutions. At Avian, we move fast, take risks, and don't settle for the status quo. To learn more, visit Avian's website at avian.com. That's avian.com.